Hello. Hello. Welcome to Leap Taken. Here at Leap Taken, I talk about all things witchy, craft related, law of attraction, manifesting, esoteric, and everything else in between. And today we're going to talk about this book, How to Study Magic. I was actually really looking forward to reading this book. This was in a book haul from The Last Life last Saturday. And think I have my background noise on. Anyway, so yeah, How to Study Magic, A Guide to History, Lore, and Building Your Own Practice by Sarah Lyons, illustrated by Tobias Goebel. This was a very good book. This was actually something I will most likely reference again and again. This was a book that I think is important if you are especially how do I say this? If you are studying, if you're somebody, okay, you don't have to have a YouTube channel, but you're studying magic, I think this is a good book to have. I think this is a good book also if you are someone who is studying or explaining magic to others. She gives a lot of factual historical information and sort of attempts to take something very broad, such as magic, and sort of put it into pieces. It's not a very long book either. To put it into these categories that she can kind of go in depth with and explain. This is not the kind of book that you pick up to get spells and rituals, although she has a couple things in here, not necessarily spells, but she has a couple things in here. This is the kind of book when you're really trying to understand where's this where is Wicca? Like we hear a lot of things about Wicca, things like that, Golden Dawn, ceremonial magic, pagan, the term pagan. We have an idea of what that is, but she breaks it down a little bit more. The point is, this book is very thorough for it to be um, only 100, less than 200 pages, like 100 and without the additional acknowledgments, yeah, 170 pages. I think this is, it's an easy read. She has a sense of humor, Sarah Lyons. I like her humor. Um, and I would just, spoiler, I would recommend having this book. I think, again, if you're somebody who practices magic, you should have it. So I'm going to give an overview of kind of my overall takeaways from the book. My main takeaway was if you are not, and I read this over a matter of a few days, right? I say a solid 3 or 4 days total that I read. It took me to read this book. And that's because I was reading another book and doing some other things. But what I will say about this book is that she does, to me, a good job of keeping it light, keeping it factual at the same time, but acknowledging things that a lot of people don't want to acknowledge, especially under the witchcraft, um, in the witchcraft community or the pagan community. So one of the things that she talks about is a lot of the people we know. These Aleister Crowley. You've heard of that name, right? You've heard of the Spiral. Well, what the heck is the name of that book? I just lost it. It's in my head, and I lost it. But this is why I have to. I highlighted my sections, but for the life of me, I cannot remember. I'll get to that, so it doesn't matter. I'm going to break it by section like she does. But what I will say is that she starts off with a section on why study magic. First of all, the illustration in this book was really nice to look at. It's really pretty. I mean, look at the detail. Let me just pause for a second. Just have y'all look at the detail. Look at that. That's nice. And forgive my nails. I'm working on it. But anyway, and then she goes into the basics of magic. And the basics is what you think. She talks about divination, pendulums, books, tarot, meditation. And I highlighted something here I kind of want to talk about. She said, in magical lingo, meditation means creating a meaningful shift in consciousness. Anything that lets your conscious brain turn off for a bit is meditative. When we do this intentionally, other world spirits and inner messages can become available to us. So this is just in the beginning, and I kind of want to talk about this a little bit. She goes into a bit of this, but not as much as I'm about to. But Meditation doesn't have to be sitting cross-legged, staring into the room or with your eyes closed. It can be. And maybe you can work up to that. But for some people, it's just never going to work. That's just not how we're wired. Everybody's not the same. Meditation is dance. Meditation is singing. Meditation is being active. It's not being, still. And I know a lot of times that we talk about what it means, which is practitioners, spiritualists, occultists, on being still and what that means. But I realize as someone who, well, I'm me, and then I have children I've raised, and then other little munchkins I've had a hand in being part of their childhood. And I will just say that it is very difficult for people, like from young age as they grow. Some people are just never going to be still in a sense that is suggested by the spiritual community. Stillness isn't where they can transcend. It's might be literally through active movement. Gratefully, I have been in a place of stillness, like literally since, like just sitting, eyes closed, and just, not moving, just concentrating on my breathing. And I can find that place. I can kind of tap into that zone or that realm, or, kind of feel like there's that separation of spirit, excuse me, spirit and the physical. Even if I can't hold it long, I felt it. However, I will say I've had even more spiritual experiences just listening to music. There are certain, and it's not so much the words, it's the tone. It's the vibrations that the music, the music, so instruments, and then an actual singer as well. So I have been transcended with that. And I could be driving, you're in a car, you're driving, and you don't know. She talked about that. You don't know, you kind of don't even realize how you got home. You were just so engrossed in some music playing or something like that, which just happens to me a lot. Not a lot, but a good amount over the years, not like all the time. I'm not completely disassociating at this point in my life. Sometimes I wonder if I should because I just, life can be hard, y'all. I'm grateful for everything that I have and all the experiences, but man, life can be hard. But I'll just say that. Anyway, one of the things that she goes into is about that, the meditation. And she has a section here on mindfulness, meditation, light a candle, burn some incense if you feel moved to do so. Sit down with your legs crossed or lie down in a comfortable position. Take a moment to settle into your body. Stretch if you need to. Once you've settled, take one deep breath in through your mouth, totally filling your lungs. Hold for 4 seconds. Then exhale again through your mouth until your lungs are completely empty. And then she says, begin what is called box breath or fourfold breath. Some people might have heard of this. This is a technique in which you'll use breath in through your nose for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, and breath out through the mouth for 4 seconds, and then hold again for 4 seconds before repeating. This is what I mean when I say breath work. She's giving a better description, but it's concentrated. For if that seems too intense, maybe shorten it. The point is, you want to be in a space where you're very much intentionally paying attention to how you're breathing, and you want a consistent, that's where the 4 count. Okay, maybe do 2 count, do 3, whatever you want to do. The point is, concentrate on it, focus on it, because while you're doing that, it gives you the opportunity. You're engaging your body, you're engaging everything, all your senses in that moment on that one task, and it can help focus you. Excuse me, fo- focus you on that so that everything else can kind of go to the backside. Consciousness can chill for a second, and then you can have these other experiences. So she says, do this for 5 to 10 minutes, which I think is reasonable, trying to clear your mind and concentrating only on breathing. If your mind wanders or you catch yourself thinking about something else, simply acknowledge the thought and let it go. Same, and then she gives a walking meditation, which I think is very interesting as well. And this is where she taught, where I kind of was going a little with a moment ago. For a lot of people, moving the body is the best way to enter a meditative state. Athletes and dancers often say they reach this state of mind when they are in the middle of a game or a routine. If you feel your meditation practice needs more embodiment, try the above method and see how it feels. And that's the walking method, meditation. So, walking meditation, find a pleasant place to walk where you won't be disturbed. Take a deep breath in through the nose, out through the mouth, no counting necessary. Begin walking at a slow pace, taking 10 to 15 steps in one direction. As you walk, pay attention to your body. How does the earth feel beneath your feet? What about your clothes and your skin, that sort of thing. When you come to the end of your steps, take another breath in through the nose, out through the mouth, turn around and repeat the steps. Do this to do this for 5 to 10 minutes. So I think that's pretty good. She goes into the beam of light meditation and so forth. So this is in the basics chapter. I like that basics isn't Witchy 101. I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to get with this, but I am not disappointed at all with this book. Let me just be clear, because she's talking about the basics on how to study magic. So we're talking everything from divination, meditation, and now there's a section on burning. Burning herbs, incense, or resin for cleansing is a very common practice. She's talking about under the cleansing section, burning. So speaking as a witch and an animist for a moment, I want to recognize that plants are not just objects. They are beings with their own stories, personalities, and histories. Reducing a plant down to one quality, for example, sage equals cleansing, is a fairly new and colonial idea. And no matter which plants you are utilizing, I encourage you to get to know them a bit before applying them in magic. So let's break that down. As a um, plant mama with thriving plants, by the way, I got some in here. I got some in the front of the house, and I plan on having some more throughout the house, in the bathroom, so forth, kitchen, like in the window, stuff like that. Anyway, hi Dylan. So I have learned, and I grew up around. My mom is someone who's like she has a green thumb, and I grew up with her dealing with like we have plants all the time, everywhere. She always has plants in the house. They took up a fourth of the room, the living room. But anyway, plants do have their own personality. They truly do, and they are. I don't know if you pay attention to just how they grow, how they respond. Not all plants respond to the same stimuli. I mean, yes, water and fertilizing and all that sort of stuff, but how you speak to them, the energy in the room. Some plants thrive and some they want to be closer. They need to be near other plants. Like I'm picking that up. And that's just plants. Herbs are a whole other thing. So I do like when she stopped and said, don't reduce herbs and things like that as just this object tool that you're using in your practice. If you're willing to accept that the organic matter is magical itself, has metaphysical properties, and you're using it in your magic, why can't we go a step further with that? Now, that doesn't mean that you can't use them and you're hurting them, and so that's not what it's about. But be as we know from like indigenous culture, spirituality, or just way of life, they a lot of times they think, if they take something out the ground, off the tree, they pick something, herbs, what have you, they are expressing gratitude initially. It gets tricky because we're not really, most of us are not picking things, going foraging for our herbs. Most of us, we're ordering it or we're going into a store and we're buying it. So we're kind of missing that opportunity, but you can still be thankful. You can still, especially before you burn them, maybe say something. Say, just a thank you. Please, help me eat, like speak to them before you use them, is my point. And just express the gratitude um, that they're going to aid in whatever magical work that you're doing. But if you really think about it, this is the concept of grace. Although, at least for the people nowadays I hear saying grace, they tend to be kind of like bless the food and bless the hands that prepared the food. That's the theme of the grace, but which is fine. Um, but bless the food, yes, but like maybe take it a step further. Thank I don't know. What if we just start doing that, thanking, the animal for sacrificing its life for, your nourishment, that sort of stuff. I don't know. I might be off a little bit about that, but it's been something I have been aware of and thinking about, because when you really think about how disconnected we really are from the natural world, even who call ourselves witches and practice witchcraft, which has everything to do with nature. um, I have to catch myself, and make sure that I'm going outside, not for the sake of running errands or excuse me, something like that, but for the sake of just being outside, then it gets a little tricky, because then you're outside and all you hear is like modern things, cars, trucks, kids screaming. You don't you don't just hear animals. So I guess, I don't know, I need to make a point to go someplace more nature. And I know that. And I have been. It got chilly here and I stopped doing that. But now that it's getting nicer here in Arizona, I think I might go back out, go to the park. And people were told that, oh, go to the park, go outside. I don't know, but I don't do it. So I should. That's what I'm saying. This is, I don't want to be a hypocrite. But anyway, that stood out to me, that section. So then, keeping a magical journal. This is still in the basic section for obvious reasons. If you're watching this, I'm big on having a magical journal. And she talks about like what to put in it. So the course planetary correspondences, which actually I like this whole section too, like the way she has it lined up. And then she kind of gives an example of in a magical journal, what it could look like. I thought this was a good idea. Look at this. So, like the date, the time, the weather, moon, spells were performed, things to note. So, I thought that was pretty solid there. And then immediately, and I talked about this on a live, she gives further resources, which I think is awesome. So, where to go to next? Remember, this is a book on how to study magic. So, she's giving further resources. Excuse me, like Oak Meditation app. This is a free app. Oak Meditation is the name of the app. And then Spiritual Cleansing, a classic for a reason. This short but dense is a book called Spiritual Cleansing by Draha. Oh, I'm not going to try to say it. I'm sorry, y'all. See, it's the third one. I hope you saw that. Time Nomad Astrology app. And then we go into, she immediately jumps into chaos magic. Let me tell you something. As someone who has not in it's not like a thing where I'm like studying it and I'm really into it, but more like as it comes, I've been absorbing a little bit more knowledge about chaos magic. I was actually very happy to read this. So listen to this. Let's get something cleared up right off the bat. I'm calling it magic, Magic, not magic, Magik, Magick, or Maj, yeah, Jick. So Maj as opposed to G. This book isn't tell wait, this book isn't being written in the 1990s. First of all, you have seen probably here when I've titled things, I've put magic with the K on the end. And because I guess I'm a relic of the 90s. I don't know. So I can't help myself. Sorry. But I thought that was funny. I didn't take it, personal. So she says in chaos magic, she's talking about this thing called consensus reality, which refers to the dominant views about the nature of what is real that a culture or group of people has. Ideas about gender, sexuality, money, values, and politics almost all fall under the idea of consensus reality. And then she says it takes years of what's called deconditioning, deconditioning, through ritual and reshaping your thoughts to break from consensus reality and begin to take a bit of your destiny into your own hands, magically speaking. Let's get into that. I have talked about that here on this channel. Um, I was raised Christian in a Christian, well, I don't want to say in a Christian household because that sounds more, I don't know. It's not quite. And technically, I was not raised in a Christian household initially. My mom was giving serious witchy vibes, in my opinion, when I was younger. Definitely, practice yoga. I remember when she taught me how to stand on my head up and we were dressed for the party. We had the leotards on. I was like 5, maybe. I'll never forget that. That's like a core memory. I remember my mom being very open about me understanding my body and not feeling ashamed. And there was this book. I know my mom still has that book somewhere in her basement in a box. And between me and my sister, we really want this book. We want to find this book because no one is going to believe us. Like I've explained this book to other people, how they had like for real colorful like drawings of like your naked body, and they had like a little girl in a void. Now today no one would ever publish this book because it would be considered, you know, bad because we know weirdos would buy it. But I don't know, it was a different time. And I know there were still weirdos and maybe they did buy it, but, the public wasn't quite on that yet. But it was helpful to me. And that I cannot remember the name of that book, but it was awesome. And it was very hippie. So we're talking 70s baby here. So it was a very hippie thing, hippie vibe. Incense was always going, like crazy plants, like basically what the young girls want for an aesthetic. That was just my mom's life. Like she knew how to paint as well, and she's Capricorn, I'm Aries, and she had both of our the rams up on. She painted them on the living room wall. Fire. Like sometimes when I really think about it, I am so grateful for that, and I remember it. These are core memories. Like I remember that as part of my childhood, smoke a little, she a little smoke a little something she did, and she was cool. She was kind of hip, and not kind of. My mom was hip. She was a really cool chick. So I don't want to say was. She's still fly. She's still fly, but she was given hippie then. And at some point in the '80s, it got Christianized, because you got to get saved. So she did, and my own mom had me young, so she was going through phases like everybody else is going through. She's no different. You're trying to find the thing, find the connection to spirituality and so forth. So yeah, we were in the church. And I mean, every year as a child is formative years, but this is key because I was coming into preteen years when this was happening. So, yeah, that wasn't fun. I mean, at the time I thought it was, but I was always in a place of fear with Christianity as a child. I do know that the adults realize that they're scaring the bejeebus out of children. Um, I know they do know because I made it vocal, and I know others who are also afraid. But that's the point. I mean, fear is part of the faith. Sadly, at the same time, they're saying, "Oh God, as long." Here's the thing: you're told, "Oh, God loves you. He'll protect you. You're an innocent. You're a child. He'll protect you, but don't sin, because then you go to hell." So it's like, well, hold on, hold on. I had like you take a child and you make that sort of like their way, like how they live, and even though you as a child you're seeing that the adults are not necessarily keeping true to this no sin doctrine, and now and then I would worry about them going to hell. I was very concerned about my mom going to hell. She True Capricorn. Oh, listen, we went to church, but she stopped after a while, which I'm glad in hindsight. Before I was too indoctrinated, but then I was going with another family member. Uh, and then now I'm going into my teenage years, and I used to always feel guilt, like shame and guilt and fear were my present feelings as a practicing Christian. And I talked about this a long time ago to somebody. It was like, oh, well, that's not the kind of God I serve. I don't. And I was like, what are you talking about? I was reading the same Bible as you. I was going to the church, like what? The Pentecostal church, and when do was Pentecostal. What are y'all talking? It's like, they weren't reading different words than every other minister. Like, that stuff is scary. But anyway, I bring all that up because years and years and those formative years of guilt, shame, fear, constantly repenting. Oh my God, you know what, I just, everything, wanting, expressing your sexuality, being sexual, I felt guilt, all of that sort of stuff. So it took me a long time to decondition all of this stuff, and what's considered moral, um, gender norms, and that whole traditionalism. And I mean, that has been something. I mean, you don't grapple all this at one time. It takes time to decondition because you're not necessarily facing all these things at once, but the world is changing. And then you have to realize, oh, shoot, this is a leftover from being raised with Christian doctrine, and you have to change. Like, let me tell you something for myself, as you know, not now, but I want to say when, what year? I don't know. In the 2000s, that's all I got, early 2000s. I felt like there was obviously a shift in talking about trans rights on a national level, or not even national level, yeah, on a big level. It was part of politics. You started hearing more. So then, I'm not saying that people didn't exist and they weren't fighting for rights, but we also know, from a political point of view, it became a talking point. I'll just say that, something people were finally talking about. You have your candidates, people running and having these conversations. So I had to question myself. I had to understand, and then getting into the conversations about pronouns and all that, I had to do a little bit more deconditioning than I realized. Because again, you don't realize this is going to be something you got to focus on, because it wasn't an issue for me. I'm not trans, so it wasn't something. In the same way, honestly, when I talk to some people I know who are white, and you're having a conversation, are they aware of racism and all that stuff? Of course they are, but their day to day life is they're going, no, because they're not black, or they're white, so they're not necessarily dealing with it on that level. So now that I am aware, and I'm looking at the people around me like, oh, I need to be aware. I need to not take this attitude of, well, it's not me, so I don't have to be concerned about it. Like, just being honest. Um, and taking a step back. And then once you do that, then you have to kind of, it's just you and your thoughts. You have to unmask, do I have some issues around this? And where is it coming from? Any issue I have, I can almost tell you, with whether it's what she talks about in the book, gender, sexuality, um, values, money, politics. I have had to, systematically, as it comes up, and then intentionally decondition because of the Christian doctrine and a dogma. I'm back. I've been dealing with my parents' needs, and now I'm cooking ground beef while watching you. Hey, good. Good luck on that food. I'm gonna make some. It's funny you say ground beef because I kind of want a burger. Thank you for telling me. I think I'm gonna get a burger after this. We're on the same mind. Um, Thank you for being here, though. um, but yeah, deconditioning is the thing. So this is just in terms of chaos magic for me, in terms of just doing anything. I think that's why I go hard. I have to check myself because I don't want to like piss people off. And that's not the intention. I'm just very passionate about it. When, look, people do whatever they want, but it's very difficult for me when I'm talking to people who do practice magic. It don't matter what magic is. You practice magic. You're a spiritualist. You're a practitioner. You're somewhere under the occult. Um, and then they're saying things like, "Well, yeah, like we're having a dialogue about, I don't know. I'm trying to think of something like a goddess or something, or some sort of deity, or some sort of practice or something." And I don't know, astrology. And if your reference was to say something like, Oh, because it even says it in the Bible. It says, da 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 da. And in that moment, like, I'm like, oh, I can't. Like, I back up. I backpedal. I'm already not, because I don't use my foundation. It's not to compare my spirituality, my experiences, the path that I'm on, the path that I'm studying, to what's written in the Bible. But people don't even realize they're doing that. And by the way, you'll be taught. This person will say, "No, I don't follow." I mean, I'm just saying, it's a book, and I'm like, yeah, it is. It's also been retranslated. We know it's been manipulated. It was written, rewritten, and anyway, the point is, you're making it seem like it's facts. Which, by the way, on that same note, Sarah Lyons, the author, goes into a conversation in the book about um, if something is more ancient to us humans, whether you're a practitioner or not, there's this thought that if it's old, as if it's very old and ancient, it's more authentic, it's more true. Um, I think that's definitely an issue when it comes to religion and when it comes to practicing spirituality, or living your spirituality, I should say. People think the older it is, it's more true. There's more truth involved. When we know that's just not true. Yes, burgers. Hello, all this is great book. My book club with the Bronx Witch Coven. We just finished this. Oh, cool. Aries, goddess of fire. Oh, I'm not in my book club. I know you talk about. I love her, by the way. Um, yeah, I like her. Oh, that's good to know. So yeah, I don't know if you guys kind of want. This is just how me thinking about it, giving my review on it. But let me know in the comments if kind of what I'm talking about. I don't know if those were talking points or if it's something you thought about as well. But the authentic, like, if it's ancient, it's more authentic. And that relates to a lot of things that she gets into, and I'll get into that in just a moment. But um, just because something's been around doesn't mean it's right, doesn't mean it's true. There's a lot of things, as the author mentions in this book, that was done in ancient times throughout history that was wrong. It was not okay. It was incorrect. It wasn't the right thing to do. I'm trying not to think like that about ancient is only fact, right? I mean, just the history of how women in different cultures throughout history have been treated. And, come on, do you think that just because it's been done, which goes back into the concept of tradition, just because it's been done doesn't mean it should keep being done. And it's okay to develop a new system or tradition if you're for yourself. It's okay to develop a new sense of spirituality and how you practice. Um, can we say Wicca? So let's get into that. I'm going to jump ahead for a second. So, actually, before I get to that, so the chaos magic, she talked about, like, chaos in a nutshell is no dogma, a reliance on personal experience, decondition yourself, diverse approaches, and gnosis. So, for chaos magicians, gnosis is the ability to shift your consciousness at will. Um, I think I might be a chaos practitioner without realizing it. I do. But again, this is something I've been studying, and studying in a sense, not like intentional. It's not like a thing I'm on and scheduled, but when something comes across my path, I'm into it, and I really get into it. Um, so about that section, I want to make sure. Yeah, chaos magic. Pick this. Oh no, that's something different. I was different note. So the paradigm shift, and then she goes into the history of, and then there's some journal prompts, which I do love, and then making a servitor. She tells you how to make a servitor, which I think is pretty cool. So I want to get into that next section if I can. Spell books and grimoires, which I was like, where is she going with this section about spell books and grimoires? But actually, at first I was pleasantly surprised about mostly everything I've read in this book. So she's choosing a grimoire, but then she gets into a little bit more about grimoires. So I was thinking like grimoires, like how I do grimoires and creating my own. No, she's talking about choosing one to study magic. And I was like, duh, like I'm reading this chapter, like, remember what the name of the book is, Mika. But anyway, grimoires have historic has let me start over. Grimoires have historically been pretty rare and have only recently begun to be translated and made available to wider audiences. Some are still fairly hard to acquire, and many haven't been transcribed or printed by major publications. To make things accessible for your studies, the following grimoires are all available either for purchase or as free PDFs online. I encourage you to support scholarship on the subject by buying these books if possible, but I also understand that can't always be done. So, the Greek magical papyri, 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 yeah. This is one of the oldest collections of spells we have, and it's quite astonishing we have it at all. So then she goes into the Picatrix, Picatrix. We aren't sure of the exact author or date of this particular grimoire, but it likely comes from around the 11th century. Translated from Arabic, the title means the goal of the wise. Another one she says you could study is La Petite Albert, one of the most popular grimoires. This small but packed volume was published in the early 18th century in France as part of the Blue Grimoire period. And then the Lesser Key of Solomon. This is often the first grimoire that people learn about or encounter. Aleister Crowley translated the text along with Samuel Mathers during his time with the Golden Dawn. The sixth and seventh books of Moses. This is the youngest grimoire we'll look at, but it also is one of the most fascinating in terms of history. The book claims Moses as its author, though it's first appeared in Germany in the 19th century. So um, those are the ones that she goes into. Then she talks about the figures and symbols of the grimoire: King Solomon, Saint Caprian, Henrik, Cornelius, Agrippa. She talks about magic circles, which I thought was interesting. Magic circles are symbols drawn on the floor while you work in order to keep you safe. They usually contain names of God or angels for protection, and sometimes they have another circle within a triangle outside of them for spirits to manifest within. Talks about magic seals, number squares, Hebrew letters, and the activity at the end of this chapter is making a planetary candle. Hi, Ms. Sweets. Yes. Hi, Princess Diary. Hello. Chaos magic is very similar to pop culture magic. Ah, now that makes sense. Okay. All right. Sometimes I wonder if something that is taken as ancient practice fact, I wonder if that started off as UPG and transformed as ancient fact or practice. Yeah. Listen, if you want to kind of explore that, she does a very good job of kind of going through that process. Let me stop my phone. I like to study grimoire, but they're modern. I don't think the older ones would be easy for me to comprehend. That's one of the biggest issues for me. It's hard to get into it sometimes because I feel like I'm constantly not understanding and you keep reading and rereading. It's like, you know what, I'm done. Or maybe that's me. Like, it's frustrating trying to decipher sometimes. It's like, does somebody have a translation, like a modernized translation of this? That I can just read that instead. And then you got to trust that author, their interpretation is what it was. But I don't know. I'm willing to read a bunch of that, like different authors' interpretation of the grimoires, and I could work from there. Um, so the next section is ceremonial magic, and let me tell you, it was a treat. She explains why she went into chaos magic initially on and how to study magic. There was a reason for that. But ceremonial magic was actually, this whole chapter was really wonderful and informative. And if you don't do anything, I think it explains. I mean, did I know some of this? Yes. But how she giving the names and the additional facts was helpful to me. I like history, so that was helpful. They talked and wrote in different English. It is hard, yeah, or a different language altogether. Um, so she goes into the history. Ceremonial magic is a broad term for mostly European magic that arose out of the grimoires and both Christian and Jewish mysticism is generally more standardized than witchcraft or chaos magic and places a great emphasis on study, discipline, and learning with a group of other magicians. Ceremonial magic is usually confusing and complex, I agree, and often involves learning incredibly ornate rituals in order to perform magic. For this reason, is also sometimes called ritual magic. So let's talk about this a little bit. Most of the public understands ceremonial or ritual magic, but they're always thinking it has to do with sacrifice. I don't know if you notice this. First of all, in the world, at least on my For You page on TikTok, I'm seeing so much of that where everything is a ritual. They think everything is a demonic ritual of sacrifice. Um, I am concerned at the number of people who truly 100% in a very literal sense have a hard time understanding or wanting to conceptualize that someone who is of the same race ethnicity as them somehow broke the odds, became super famous, made a lot of money, and continues to do so, and puts out different types of art. Because if you're an entertainer, if you're a singer, performer, it's art at that point, right? And their art is supposed to make you feel something. It might make you feel angry, it might make you confused, but it doesn't, just because something elicits a reaction from you doesn't mean it's demonic. And then I wonder, do these people want to live in a bland world where nothing provokes them? It doesn't make you feel something? I mean, I respect things, even if it pisses me off because I find it offensive. There was something, that might not have been the intention of the artist, but it's hard for people to understand that. Um, well, we have a population of people who don't think critically because of religion mostly, and just the way I think public school and how people are raised. But I'm going on a tangent with that anyway. People understand what ritual magic is my point. I think a lot of people do understand it, even if they're not a practitioner. But there's always such negativity associated with it. However, on that same note, when I was reading over this section, and um, I don't know. It does seem kind of negative because let's talk about why a lot of what these different let me, I'm trying to like jump in and not give too much away, but so a lot of these magicians and these groups who got together for ceremonial magic, and a lot of the names, we'll get into that. They really basically were ripping off bits from this culture, and there were mostly white men, European men. It would have been a boys' club for sure initially, and to me, it's always like even within the study of that, there's always like this. There's hierarchy, um, and it feels, I don't know, it feels kind of classist, and I don't know. And you would have had to been wealthy. Not the common man would not have had access to being a part of it. It's a super secret and all that sort of stuff, and how they kept their records was going to be super secret. And anyway, the point is, I don't like that. I don't like it. And the basis of it, of where a lot of these, um, I'm just going to say groups that came out of this practicing ceremonial magic. One is based in Christian and Jewish mysticism, and I find a lot of fault with that myself. So it's hard for me to kind of I don't know, go all in. I'm speaking just personal, not anybody else. Me personally, it's I'm not attracted to that for that reason. But I do appreciate that she was able to break everything down, and a lot about the Kabbalah, because, and I was like, why are we talking about the Kabbalah? I've read that, but I was like, why? Where are we going with this? So she talks about that because a lot of things was based on the mysticism of that. Like, okay, let me explain a little bit about it. So she says here, There are technically three different types of Kabbalah: Jewish Kabbalah, that's with the K, Christian Kabbalah, that's the one with the C, and Hermetic Kabbalah, that's the one with the Q. The timeline of this development goes something like this. So the 12th century, the first Jewish Kabbalistic texts are written in Spain. 15th century, Christian Kabbalah is created by Pico della Mirandola, who believed the Kabbalah to be a synthesis of ancient wisdom and proof that all mystical teachings eventually led those to Christ. You can see why I don't have a problem with this. 16th century, Kabbalah is formally synthesized with Hermeticism and magic in Cornelius Agrippa's landmark work, Occult Philosophy. So then she breaks down the tree of life and all that sort of stuff. They talked around, okay, I'm going to learn and hopefully incorporate ancient Greek magic in my practice. Celebrating birthdays is a yearly ritual. Celebrating Valentine's Day is a yearly love trust ritual. Yeah, lust ritual, right? It's weird to me that people don't understand that and think all rituals are evil. Your morning ritual, waking up at the same time, doing the same process. For some people, I mean, they might pray first thing, but if you tell them that, they get freaked out. um, oh, I've been reading a book for the past week and a half that I think you'll enjoy. It's called Conform or Be Cast Out, the literal demonization of nonconformists by Logan Albright. I will look that up. Yeah, a lot of modern day magic is based on a Kabbalah. Sorry if I mistyped that. No, you know what? There's three different spellings. You're fine. Um, and then the Enochian magic. Ooh, let me see. I want to on this page. So let's talk about this a little bit. So Enochian magic is because it's not Enochian. Wouldn't it be Enochian? Yeah, is a magic is a form of magic created by Queen Elizabeth the First magician John Dee. Y'all probably heard of John Dee before. The name comes from the Book of Enoch, a supposed lost book of the Bible that tells the story of how angels came down from heaven and married mortal women. Dee was said to have made contact with angels in his workings and deciphered their language. Dee didn't call this form of magic Enochian, he just called it angelic. That came later with the Golden Dawn. We'll get into that. Um, So, similar to Hermetic Kabbalah, Enochian magic is about moving up certain keys or ethers in order to make contact with angels at higher and higher stages of being. Just like levels in a video game, the ethers become harder to unlock as you go up the ladder. There are 30 ethers, each with three governors that guard them. I won't even get into this, but here's the letters. um, to me, this all, okay, make your own stuff. One thing I got from this book, I'm gonna just tell, make your own system, make your own traditions, do what you will, because clearly this, when you really think about it, like just because this is old doesn't make it better, doesn't make it more true. What are we doing here? Like this ascension, this constant thing where you're going forward. I think life already has those built-in ascension points. I don't think that man has to create more levels for each other and ourselves. Life itself, the stages of life, you're born, helpless, and then you learn to feed you can learn to put food in your mouth and walk, and you know, everything is a step and a milestone. Even if no one's there celebrating, it's real. You're still going through it. Um, your level of thought and how much you can start to conceptualize critical thinking, being able to lie, you don't understand, making up stories. That's the whole thing. Like these are all levels of ascension of consciousness. Um, and then, going into adulthood and then witnessing it as an adult with your own offspring or those you care about, maybe not kids, somebody else. You're witnessing this, and then coming to terms with mortality and all that. These are all levels of ascension. We don't look at it that way because there's no escape and it just is life, but they are. Why do we need to build in more? It's just um yeah, okay. With the E, thank you. That sounds far-fetched to me. Exactly. Someone made a Greek Kabbalah, but it turned out it wasn't the best. So that's that. And then she talks about I won't. It's the Freemasons. All right, let's dabble. Let's dabble with this. If you're an American reading this book, you probably know the Freemasons or just the Masons as that weird club most of the founding fathers were in, and the inspiration for at least one Nicolas Cage movie. Love that movie. Anyway, if you're not an American reading this book, I'm quite frankly not really sure what you were raised to believe about them. Apologies, but they don't teach us that other countries exist until about 10th grade in the United States. This is the humor of the author. First of all, that's true. So, in the Middle Ages in Europe, crafts and trades were structured around guilds. My mind immediately went to World of Warcraft. Just know that. Guilds were groups you would join to learn skills of the craft, apprentice with seasoned workers, and climb through the ranks based on skill level and years in the organization. These guilds existed for things like carpentry, metalworking, and masonry. That is how, as growing up as a child, I knew Masons. We didn't say Freemasons, we called them Masons. For the black men that I knew who were almost always older, like grand pop age, that I did know, they were Masons. The ones I knew were Masons. I had in my family, my great aunt was a Eastern Star, very Christian folk, as most black people would have been at that time, at that age. And it was never about anything demonic rituals. I'm gonna tell you that right now. City of Angels. um, so Freemasonry spread quickly and remains one of the most popular and mainstream occult orders in the world because they allow men of all social rank into the order. Now, we just had that other conversation about, the ascension, and basically you'd have to be somebody and have some money, a certain class level for a lot of these other groups that you were in. So this was different. And isn't it interesting? Because this is one of the ones I find that is demonized a lot because it's more accessible, because the commoners were allowed to be in it. That's a whole other thing. But anyway, Freemasonry contains a complex language of symbols, a rite of initiation, and a system of ranks that went on to inspire future occult orders and Mormonism. I don't know if y'all know where I live. I'm surrounded by Mormons. That's a whole vibe out here, man. They are clearly not a fan of black people, brown skin. And it is not my imagination. It is the repulsive way they kind of move back. They look, and it's everything. Like, I got 50 million targets I have access to. Sometimes I like to go further out to this one particular one. And I remember this woman was coming out, and I was like, it was in the summertime, and she had on like a lot of clothes. Like everything was covered, but not in like anyway, like more like an old fashioned kind of way. And then the telltale thing was it was her daughter who was also dressed similarly. And I was like, but the way that mom looked like, she looked back at the girl, her daughter looked like a teenager, like a young teen, maybe 13, 14. I don't know. She looked like, what you think? I'm gonna come run up on it and take for me? I was by myself. You think I'm gonna come take your baby? Like, what are you looking at me like this for? Like fear, real fear was in her face. That's the whole vibe. That's the whole thing right now. Let me just tell you, don't. I can't with that. Anyway, um, so you'll see the rituals of the Freemasons and their structure reflected in Wicca, the Lemma, and many other occult orders that were formed after the Masons, which she talks about Wicca quite extensively. And I think, yeah, what I learned, I mean, when I first got into magic and wanting, practicing witchcraft and so forth, I initially was Wiccan. A lot of people were. I think the reason I couldn't stay is because I started learning, I like history, I like learning things. So I'm going to study it. And the more I studied and understood, I was like, hold on, some of this. All right, now, y'all. It's it's like a ripoff of other cultures like Hinduism and all that sort of stuff. And it's like this kind of, just some things are just out and out lies. Like I was a believer in that Wicca is. was like, oh, she breaks down. I'll get to that section in a minute where she's talking about like the things that we thought were really true and they just flat out were not. Um, a friend's shirt, yes, Central Burke. um, the Golden Dawn, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn in 1888. So let's talk about that. so, um, the Golden Dawn was founded in 1888 in London by three Freemasons, William Wynne Westcott, Samuel Liddell Mathers, and William Robert Woodman. The beginnings of the organization, while somewhat interesting, aren't as important as the structure and impact of this group. So just know they involve a made up German countess and fake secret societies. The founders also claimed they had been contacted by the secret chiefs, a concept similar to Bodhisattvas. I'm probably bastardizing the way they say that in Mahayana Buddha in Buddhism. All right, so that comes from Victorian understandings of Sufism and Buddhism. Basically, secret chiefs were spiritual beings that provide help to magical seekers and maintain the secret hierarchy of the universe. Why it gotta be a secret? Why is it a secret, y'all? And why do only certain men get access to the secrets? This is where y'all got me effed up right here. Like this right here, like I'm already like, okay. So, so while the structure of the Golden Dawn was similar to that of the Freemasons, it differed in that women could join. All right. And many first wave feminists, radical thinkers, and artists became members. All right, don't get excited. The organization of the group was based around previous Rosicrucian. I cannot say this word well, sorry. Orders the founders had been in, as well as Hermetic Kabbalah. Members were expected to climb up spiritual grades as their understanding and command of magic grew. This is one of my issues I had with conventional covens, which is basically born from all of this. Wiccan covens, or some most traditional or formal covens tend to be based in this sort of stuff, and there's like hierarchy and all that sort of stuff, and I have a hard time with people telling me what to do. Let's start there. And I have a hard time keeping my thumb on people. Like, I don't like that. I like, well, be you. If you don't like it, all right, then you don't have to do it. But like, well, what do you want to do? That's me. I'm not the type of person who is like, I'm the supreme and follow me, and you have to ascend to this level and this grade until you learn. I'm not doing all that. Y'all don't get yes, don't get excited. What's the other thing I wanted to point out about this? While now obscure, it's hard to overstate the influence of the Golden Dawn at that time. If you ever use the widely used Rider-Waite-Smith tarot card deck, you have touched a part of the legacy of the Golden Dawn. Arthur Edward Waite and Pamela Coleman Smith were both members and designed the deck around their modern understanding of what the cards meant. Ha! Rider is the name of the publisher. This has influenced all of tarot up through the present day and likely for as long as people will use tarot. Writers like Bram Stoker, Arthur Machen, sorry, were members, in addition to occultists like Crowley, Dion Fortune, and Gerald Gardner, as well as many famous actors and artists of the day. The influence of this group had in art, horror, literature, and magic is truly incalculable. Incalculable. Say that 2 times, 3 times. Anyway, then she goes into Mr. Aleister Crowley, who was born in 1875, died in 1947. He's a controversial figure, as I'm sure people may know. He was born into a wealthy religious family that owned the modern equivalent of a restaurant chain. So he was wealthy. He was initiated in the Golden Dawn in 1898 and rose quickly through the ranks of the order. Um, let me see. When you get, this is what I wanted to tell y'all. She says, when you first get into magic, there are going to be lots of people who tell you that Crawley, Aleister Crawley, is the be all and end all of magic. This is maybe not today, but from what I was told way back when, yes, I did have a couple people say that to me. And there might even be some people who make you feel dumb for not knowing everything about the man. You're not dumb. You don't need to know nothing about that man. Some of this praise is understandable. He is the prophet to a lot of people, after all, and Crowley absolutely changed not only the world of magic, but the world as a whole, a modern evangelist for the practice of magic. He wrote dozens of books, founded a religion, was supposedly, she put supposedly, a spy during World War One, and was one of the first modern celebrities being dubbed the wickedest man in the world by the press. That said, Aleister Crowley is a complex figure. She says, quote, who I think many people wish were simple. As you study magic, you're going to encounter a lot of strong feelings about this man in every direction. Like the Beatles, while you have to know about Crowley, you don't have to like him. That's fair. I think it's important to understand his impact so that you can choose whether you want to engage with him or not. So there you go. And she goes on with a couple things. She breaks that down, the different orders, and then ceremonial magic today. So it's important for us to unpack this pretentiousness before we leave the world of ceremonial magic, because this attitude is what keeps a lot of people from studying it and will undoubtedly be something you run into. Ceremonial magic is a broad term for Western occult practices that involve heavy ritual, have degrees of initiation, and often draw on medieval magic with interpretations of Egyptian and Babylonian magic sometimes included as well. Um, it is a form of magic historically practiced by wealthy white men. This, when I read that, I immediately thought of Lovecraft Country. It was on HBO Max. Um, Canceled after one season. Excellent writing, excellent story. Just everything was excellent. The visuals about that series. I am thoroughly annoyed that they didn't carry it on because I was all in. But if you didn't, spoilers, if you didn't watch it, essentially there was a lot happening. There's supernatural things, including magic. There's magic in this story. And there were rituals being performed by wealthy white men in a secret society. And there was a woman involved, but she wasn't allowed. He wouldn't let her in. I don't want to give too much away about the plot, but in the end, um, there was this black man in the story, in the series, who he was a descendant of this prior to one of the descendants of the same rich white man in the movie who wanted to sort of ascend and take on this magical power, um, which would have given him a lot of power. And we didn't, we, the viewers, and the character, you didn't want him to have that power because we didn't need them. It was the plot. I think it was taking place in the '60s. The storyline of the series, and the last thing do you know what was happening in the '60s? Do you want wealthy white men to now have crazy magical powers? Do you want that? Not if No. If you're anything but a other wealthy white man, no, you don't. You don't want that because it's not going to be good for anybody else, white women included. I fell off of Lovecraft Country mostly because my mom didn't want to see the bad stuff. Well, that bad stuff was telling the story. It was some bad stuff, but it was telling a bigger story. And in the end, they kept that magic out of the hands of that wealthy white man. But reading this made me think about that. Um, but another point was the concept of high magic as opposed to low magic. Like these terms, um, if you really think about it, I don't like any of that sort of stuff. High magic is done for higher purposes, like communing with angels for the fun of it, or ascending to being a god on earth. While low magic is done for lower purpose, like healing your sick cow or cursing the king who wants to come and take your land. So it has to do with class relations, misogyny, and racism. I mean, are we gonna really talk about black magic versus white magic, y'all? Right? Hmm. I must get back into it. Yeah, I might revisit it again. I'm currently still watching True Blood. True Blood. I'm on season three, um, which I realize how much I love that show. I love if you're gonna do camp, do it well. That show jumped the shark at later seasons, but season three they still had Alan Ball as the director. He was still like putting on like a stealth. To me, it was is when you watch it from now. And first of all, the show still holds. The phone, the technology, maybe not so much, but everything else still holds. Still holds, even in 2023. Like the crazy religious people against the vampires. It just sounds like people today. Nothing's changed. It's the same. So she goes into this section. Next section is witchcraft. I really found it fascinating how she divided up these sections. So we had chaos magic, ceremonial magic, grimoires, and this is witchcraft. First of all, I love the artwork. Again, it's beautiful. Um, she talks about the history. She decides to kind of split it up. Ancient shamanic witches, cunning craft and wise people, pagan religious witchcraft, and modern witchcraft. So that's the next section. She kind of goes into shamanic witchcraft, explaining about that, the witch trials, and all of that. One of the takeaways of this whole chapter that I found very interesting is that she points out the word witch. We just, I say I'm a witch and I'm proudly talk about it. I'm a witch. I practice witchcraft. Obviously, in the past, it's not something, a term you would have said about yourself. Not because of fear. It was something like a legal term put on you. Um, it wasn't something you claimed. People, it's kind of like, um, I'm trying to think, like, you wouldn't say I'm a criminal. Um, the courts would say you were a criminal. They would, because you stole something because of the actions that you do. So essentially, people were just potentially doing the actions. And then there's conversation on, she brings up one, okay, so we don't really know the details. Not really. We have recorded accounts of the people who are being punished, and then there's that one person, her last name Goody, I can't remember, where she openly agreed, "Hey, I'm a witch," and she gave her, went to the authorities and basically to be punished or whatever. But in her accounts, she would talk about being, they would go and go into the forest and do things and be one with the devil and all that sort of stuff. And, it does make you think. And my thoughts on that, the author was kind of making, to me, left me with the impression of, if okay, let's really look at what this woman's account is. Let's say that's really what that was, witchcraft to her. That was her being a witch, where there was a connection with Satan. Because think about it, most people who were accused of witchcraft were most likely Christian. They were Christian, or you know a part of that. They believed in that. Um, So I don't know. I found that fascinating because it's like, well, if I was, this is my issue with, and if you are a Christian, which, sorry, but I'm gonna say what I gotta say. I do believe if you are a Christian, which you might be saying to yourself or saying to others, well, I don't work with Satan, but the concept of Satan as a Christian, at least a modern day Christian, the things that are not of God, they're Christian God. Otherwise, the default is if it's not in this box, it's got to be in this box. There's not a lot of middle, right? It's like God's law and all that sort of commandments and all the stuff in the Bible, it's supposed to stand. So if you're a Christian, which my issue has always been, so just say you work with the devil because you're in that pantheon, you're in that that particular mythology. So don't get mad because I call it mythology. You're in the mythology, you're in that realm. It would only make sense that you work with the devil and demons and all that sort of stuff. So when I see witches and they talk about, oh, I summoned the demon, I work with them and they help me and all this sort of stuff. Okay, well, I guess that makes sense because you about that whole life, so that makes sense to me. That's the path that you're on. I think the weird part is when they'll look you dead in the eye and be like, "No, what are you talking about? I don't work with the devil. I don't work with Satan. What do you mean?" And it's like, well, If you, and the author even says, if you choose to still want to call yourself a Christian and still be a witch, like no one's telling you. There's nobody saying that you can't do it. I'm just saying, are you just not all in all of it? Because I don't know. I don't want to say too much because it's gonna get too offensive, and I don't know how to say these words without it just coming out crazy. Oh God, I get the definitions of high and low magic, but it makes me have shivers or something, so I don't quite like the terms. Yeah, are you talking about Sarah Good? Yeah, I've they said her name. I cannot remember her name right now. Um, no, it was not Sarah Good. It was a different name. Black and White Worldview, the book I recommended earlier, talks about Lucifer demonizing Pan and other deities, etc. Yeah. What if Goody and her friends were just lesbians kicking it in the woods? Maybe she believed her sexuality was demonic. Boom. That's what she's to me pivoting. Like, what did they? It was what they were doing. It wasn't the term. Now we're hung up on like titles and terms. I'm a witch, so that means I do this versus they were just doing things as someone else was calling them a witch. So if you are of this time and you're seeing these people being accused of witchcraft and being called a witch for these activities, and you do these activities, or more so, you would have thought, oh well, I guess I'm wrong. I'm a witch too. I should be punished, right? I guess. Um, yeah, I do think that well, we know certain mushroom. You gotta think at the time they had access to a certain mushrooms, herbs, things that could bring on hallucinogenic an experience, and combine that with sex and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, they that would have been considered witchcraft. Because as the author states, there's no actual hard and fast like this is 100%. Although some people did keep magical records and things like that and spells, there were spell books and stuff like that. But I mean, we only know so much information. Um, for sure. There's not like one true thing we can say, oh, that's the way it was done. This is the way it's been done, and all that sort of stuff. So that's what I like about this book because she sort of exposes that. And we're not getting a lot of that. I review a lot of books. You're not getting a lot of that information. Um, Even in the Witchy 101 books, no one's talking about that. It's very high level and it never goes that deep, even when they supposedly are breaking down the history of witchcraft. So I think she did an excellent job. And again, in a way that's approachable, it's less than 200 pages. This is not a big book, but she covers a lot of information, in my opinion, and she gives you resources again to go further into the study of it. Um, and then the next section is paganisms, gods, and history, uh, which was interesting because I was like, well, isn't all of this? And she breaks down about paganism and all that sort of stuff. So that's an interesting chapter. How she presents all the information, and then talking about deities. There's a section on what did you say here? There's a section here on choosing or being chosen by a deity. That was something I struggled with for most majority of my practicing witchcraft is that I just was really struggling with the I wanted to believe so bad, but it just didn't feel real, didn't feel natural, and I was like, I think in a way I kind of felt like it's the archetype thing, like that was kind of my belief, and probably still is on some level. However, I've had I need, you know what, for somebody like me, I need a very direct deity. Like you got to be in my face. You have to be consistent in my face and be like, look, I'm here. You can call me what you can call me just I'm a dream. You know, you can call me a part of your consciousness. You can whatever you want. But I'm here. Like I need that type of deity to come in and be like, hello. So, and I felt like that's I need that. And I got that now. By the way, because otherwise I'm just like I don't know about all this stuff. Like it just I don't know. Like and also she even talks about that where you notice that a lot of people who are pagan, they won't say, "Oh, I work with this goddess. I work with this god." We don't. Most of us don't say worship. Some people do, but I don't. I don't worship. I work with. So I think Dylan, you said it earlier. You used the initial unverified personal gnosis. Um, uh, let me read this. So she has a section on that, by the way. I won't get into that of the time, but that's an interesting section as well. And then she kind of rounds it out with a note on racism and appropriation. I thought that was good. It was just a section, but it was on point what she said there. That chapter ends with a guided meditation, and then the next section is like, so where do we go? Where to go from here? What do you do? And I think that was a nice wrap up of the create your own practice. That's something I realized that while one, I like some level of structure around my spirituality, no dogma or anything like that, but structure. Like I celebrate this, or I don't celebrate this, or not don't, but like I do this. Like the will of the year, even though we can get into the concept of the will of the year and how true that is and to what extent, but I'm adopting my own thoughts on it, which I'm comfortable with, so I like to celebrate it. I want to end this with something she says. This right here, y'all all I think will get a kick out of this. So she says, below are some phrases and words I look for when picking up a book, looking at someone's blog, or going through someone's videos or tweets. Keep in mind, these words aren't bad, but for whatever reason, they seem to attract bad scholarship, delusional thinking, or outright grifters. Here you go. The first word, Celtic. The Celts were real, they existed, and they did some cool stuff while they were around. Looking at the bookshelf in some New Age sections of the bookstore, though, you get the sense that the Celts are the Wakandans for white people. When I read this, y'all, the Wakandans for white people, I really laughed out loud about that because I was like, that's so true. That is so true. A lot of modern mythology gets put on the Celts, and a lot of people claim they practice Celtic magic when we don't know much about or what that really means. The thing is, much of what we know about Celtic history and spirituality was recorded by invading Romans or survived through fragmented folklore that was often the target of colonial or religious forces. So there you go. Um, OMG, villain. This doesn't stop people from writing libraries worth of books on Celtic religious practices, holidays, lifestyle, morals. I talked about the will of the year. I want to make it very clear if someone who isn't a historian or who doesn't cite multiple good historical sources claims that this ritual, this spell, or this belief is something that comes straight from the ancient Celts, they are almost certainly wrong. I'm going to leave it there. Then she says the next word. She just put goddess stuff. We've been over this a bit in this book, but I just want to drive a point home here. Goddess stuff can really get really thorny really quickly. To keep it simple, check out the book, blog, or video you're interacting with. Makes any sweeping claims about ancient pan-European goddess cults or talks about ancient people simply worshiping the goddess. Goddess work has been beautiful and transformative, and goddess archetypes and mysteries have existed in some form of another since the Stone Age. I'm not claiming that anyone writing books on or claiming to work with the divine feminine or particular goddess is a fraud or wrong. On the contrary, there has been some amazing work and scholarship on this subject. She's doing a lot of back. She's like trying to explain it, but then she says, I'm just saying to check which historical sources they're using and to watch out for any references to Margaret Murray. Margaret Murray, because this woman basically lied, and a lot of stuff is based off of her work or people who source heavily from her. So like the Celts, goddess cults existed. Some were very widespread, and seeing correlations between some deities is fine, but people get, let's say, creative, her word, with these facts. So if an author is claiming to be the priestess of an ancient, unbroken goddess cult, simply put the book down and walk away. And I think that was my experience initially coming into the concept of working with goddesses because I was exposed to people like that at first. Yes, Murray, Margaret Murray. Look her up if for some additional reading. So I would say this is definitely a book you want to get into. Um, it's she's never taking apart what you believe in. She's just stating what it is, and the history and the actual facts around the things that we believe. And it shouldn't take away, because I had to kind of sit with that myself. It shouldn't take away how you feel about how you practice, other than if you do find out something was maybe kind of fudged and you're basing a lot of your spirituality on that. Listen, everything is made up. It's all made up. It's all made up. Keep going. If it's working for you, don't worry about it. That, and she kind of alludes to that in the book as well. Don't worry about it. Okay, let me just catch up here. When I was reading that section about Lucifer, I was like, man, I should work with him. He sounds good. I want to write a beginner book that has depth like this book. I think this is an excellent book. If just understanding the details, the histories, the facts behind all the things that, if you now just go into the store and pick up a book, you don't get that. Another book that I'm working with my private coven, and I talked about this book before, Mythology for a Magical Life. This is also an excellent book because it's not telling you how to study, but it's kind of in the same vein, because I like how Ember Grant, you'll read basically in each chapter sort of a myth, a mythology, a story, and then she'll give like a breakdown about that as it relates to like modern witchcraft, and then journal prompts and activities to do. So this is actually a really good book um, to get into. So this is another, if you didn't know, and I talked about this a while months ago in 2022. Very, you love this book. Very good book. This is a you want this. This, if witchcraft is becoming humdrum, you're not inspired. Get this book. This is a good one. Thorne Mooney's book is good. Kind of dry read from me, but very informative. I would agree. I would agree. I have a thing for authors who are very kind of informal in their writing, and it's almost like a conversation. And I noticed that for those who it's like Sarah Lyons. She's the way I'm reading it, thinking like we're having a conversation, like it is humor and things like that. I like that, almost with a narrative type point of view. I like books like that. Nonfiction books. It's easier to read. It feels less like I don't know, like a boring history book from school or something. Oh my gosh. So I am going to wrap up here, but I hope that you guys enjoyed the book review, the breakdown of this. But I really enjoyed this book. I did. I look for something that, I don't know, makes me think a little differently. And this book definitely does, about, challenges a little bit of the things that you think is true. I skipped the Wicca section just because of time, but read book, y'all get into it. And you'll know yourself. So I hope everybody has a great rest of your day on Saturday. I was serious. I do want to go get a burger more than ever. Yeah, I really want a burger. I also have low iron, so I don't know. It's probably part of that. But the burger sounds real good right now. So I would say her channel is the same way, dry but informative. It's probably because she's really academic and arrow. I like academics, so I can get with that. Maybe not a lot, but I occasionally watch it. I need to watch her channel more. I keep forgetting about her stuff, but I actually like her and I like what I saw from before. So maybe I'll make a point to go back and look at her stuff. But I hope everyone has a great weekend. Um, and full moons tomorrow, so do some releasing work. Um, I mean, you can do manifesting work, but I think it's a good time for releasing. So I feels like it right now in February. Like, do release the expectations and all the stuff that you thought things were going to be when 2023 started. Let that go and just go into spring, feeling uh, not held down by expectations that never made sense to begin with. All right, so I will end it there. I will see you guys next Saturday. I will have a video out very soon for next week, and I will continue this month, mostly book reviews. All right, so bye. Full Moon Werewolf. Bye.